All right, good afternoon. Welcome to Clayton County's virtual graphic novel club. My name is Erica Ware,
And I'm Rolling Wellmaker.
and today we're presenting DC Swamp Thing to you guys. Not a lot to really do with backstory and everything, but we'll go ahead and jump right on in. As soon as it changes. There we go. Exit. All right, so DC Swamp Thing was first featured in kind of a special issue for DC, their House of Secrets. It's kind of their spooky, scary stories. 1971, House of Secrets number 92. Um, the story was so popular that DC gave Lin Wen and Bernie Wrightson creative control to create a Swamp Thing series. This series, they changed the story a little bit. The lead's name was Alec Holson, and he was caught in a lab explosion set by his partner. But due to poor sales, it was only short-lived, and it was canceled. I will go into a little bit more of House of Secrets and the first issues of Swamp Thing later on, but after it was canceled somewhere in the mid 70s, in 1982, director Wes Craven made a film called Swamp Thing. So DC kind of wanted to capitalize off that release. Wes Craven's film was not an exact adaptation of the Swamp Thing from these stories, but because of the name and the similarities, DC was like, let's go. So they created another series called Swamp Thing. It almost failed again, didn't really capitalize off of it. And DC brought in a new writer. You may have heard of him, Alan Moore, British comic book writer Alan Moore. You may know him from Watchmen and V for Vendetta. He took over the series in 82, and he pretty much wrote for it until 1987. It ran for about 67 issues and then ended. So House of Secrets, this one right here, was the story of botanist Alex Olson. He was a scientist in early 1900s Louisiana. He was caught in a lab explosion set by his partner, Damian Ridge, and who attempted to kill Alex to steal his wife, Linda. That's Linda right there on the cover. The blast did not kill Alex, so Damian dragged his body out to the swamp and buried Alex in the swamp. Rather than dying, though, Alex's body reacted with the chemicals from the lab and transformed him into a hulking plant-like creature known as the Swamp Thing. Damian ended up marrying Alex's widow, and after being married for a while, Linda became suspicious of Damian, and she started to believe that he was the one who killed her husband. So then Damian plotted to kill her also. Of course, Alex, aka the Swamp Thing, couldn't allow this to happen, so he returned from the swamp to save his wife's life. The transformation limited his speech and communication, so he was unable to prove his identity to his wife. And because he could not speak to her and talk to her, and she was scared of him, it kind of broke his heart and sent him back into the swamp where he lived out the rest of his days, tragically. This story leads to the Dark Genesis Swamp Thing that Lynn and Wrightson created. Yeah, Wrightson created. So they led to the story Dark Genesis, but then that gets canceled. So it leads to Mr. Moore's reboot of the saga of the Swamp Thing. In this reboot, Alex, they changed the name to Alex Holland, who is a botanist also living in Louisiana, who is transformed into the Swamp Thing after an explosion. Holland was killed, though, in his explosion. And there was a lot of confusion at that time where, was it Holland? Was it Holland's body, like in the original Swamp Thing? But no. Holland was actually killed in the explosion that sent him into the muck of the swamp that he had been researching. He was researching biorestorative formula in the swamp. So Holland was transformed into a physical avatar of the swamp thing. And it is known as the Green. So the Green basically took Alec's thoughts and memories and absorb them. So he knows who Alec is. He knows all of his memories. He knows everything about him. And the Green is, and Roland will go over this later, the different elements, but the Green is what sustains all plant life on Earth. And it's also an emissary for the Parliament of Trees. This new power, he struggles with the human memories and what he's forced to leave behind. On the opposite side of that, after he is killed, the company he worked for sends another botanist, Jason Woodrue, into that same swamp to figure out what happened to Alec. So they send Woodrue in. He does an autopsy for the corporation. The creature, he then surmises that Swamp Thing is not really Alec, but it is a creature that absorbed Alec's memories. And so while he's in the swamp, he awakens that Green, and he starts experimenting on himself with the Green, what all of Alec's what he's been studying, all of the formulas and everything. So he starts experimenting on himself and eats one of the tubulars that is growing in Swamp Thing body, and it connects him to the Green and to another phase of all plant life. He then is reverted to Flouronic man, who we'll talk about later, and that kind of drives Jason Woodrue mad, and Flouronic man decides he's going to destroy the Earth. On top of that, you have a Swamp Thing has another friend who's in the swamp, who is Abby Cable, who is married to Matt Cable, who we will also talk about later. But she and Swamp Thing are friends. They were also friends. She was also friends with Alec Holland before his death too. So she's in the swamp. Moore creates all these new characters. In the original story with that Wynn and Wrightson did, Alec was married and he had a wife. With this introduction of Abby into their story and also Matt into their story, Matt is a part of Doom Patrol. He works with Doom Patrol, but he really is an investigator for basically superheroes and things like that, and all the creepy things that go on. And Abby is his wife, who is also a psychic and has some telekinesis in her. So they're both gifted. But what Moore does is he kind of creates when he takes over, he creates a more adult sort of Swamp Thing. And that was something at the time that, if you know anything about comics, there was still the comic code, even into the 80s. But Alan Moore decided to release this saga of Swamp Thing without the approval of the code. So basically, he wanted to introduce a more adult Swamp Thing, dealing with more adult themes and dealing with things that the other Swamp Thing did not have. So, like I said, his series ran from 84 to 87, 67 issues. And Moore also introduces some of the more popular characters in DC at this time. You have John Constantine, who he introduces in Swamp Thing, who then gets his own series, Hellblazer, and a couple of he reintroduces some of the older characters that hadn't been around in a while. Some of the things that go like Spectre comes back, Phantom, what's his name? Phantom Man? It's not the Phantom.
Stranger.
Deadman,
Stranger.
yeah, Phantom Stranger. And he reintroduces these characters back into DC who haven't been, they were from the golden age of comics for DC, the 40s and the 50s. And so he does a lot of this, reintroducing these characters back that kind of go bump in the night and deal with the supernatural and back into the DC world, kind of giving them another, like a second chance. So after his ending in 87, Swamp Thing kind of goes on hiatus. They do re-release his stuff in graphic novel form throughout the 90s and the 2000s. But in 2011, you get New 52 Swamp Thing. So in this, after Flashpoint in 2011 and New 52 happens, Alec is given back his human body. He has vague memories of being Swamp Thing. He lives in fear of transforming again. So you have a human Alec back and his memories of being Swamp Thing. Also around during that Moore, I forgot to mention this, but during that Moore time of writing for Swamp Thing, he also gave Swamp Thing a family. So after Abby divorces her husband, or we'll get into that later, but she and Swamp Thing actually have a child, and that child is produced through a little bit of magic and a little bit of hallucination. Moore's an interesting guy, so yeah, but it was actually the Parliament of Trees that implanted Abby with that baby. So yeah, but they do have a child, and that child is a part of the Green also. But in the New 52, he's not able to keep his human body for long, and the Green he's forced to team up with the Green again to fight a force, another elemental force called the Red. Against they team up, the Green and the Red team up to fight an evil known as the Rot, and so Holland does return to being Swamp Thing again. And then now we have 2016 to present, which is the rebirth. Oh, did you have something, Roland? Did you have something to add?
No, you're fine.
Oh, okay. All right. You have the rebirth now, which is the present story of Swamp Thing. And he's still back. Holland is back as Swamp Thing, much in the same way he was written before New 52. So it's kind of back to that Alan Moore Swamp Thing. And he basically is featured a lot during this time in Justice League Dark. He's in Hellblazer with Constantine, as well as Batman. He'll pop up in Batman every once in a while. And he's always popping up to represent the Green. So pretty much that's all he cares about. He does still have, it's not really connected like it was with Moore, where he had the family, and he still does have a family, but his daughter is grown at this time, and Abby is still around, but I don't think they're together in that sense anymore. But he's always representing the Green and what's good for nature and what's good for the Parliament of Trees. So we're going to move on to the allies. Roland, you want to start us off with, you want me to go with?
Well, you've already given Alec Holland's backstory.
Yeah.
So this is just showing his bewildered look of, I guess, well, he's not being blown up, so he's not falling into the swamp right now. This is probably him. I think this picture was taken from when he was reincarnated. Let's move to the next slide.
All right.
And now this is the main, next to Alec Holland in the storyline, in the current storylines. This is Abigail Arcane, or she has another name and I can't remember what it was. I just saw it. But she is basically the niece of the arch nemesis of the Swamp Thing, and that arch nemesis would be Anton Arcane, who we'll speak about later. In the comics, she is a young lady with striking white hair, and she is basically, she was born psychic. And these powers manifested themselves in childhood. So she was always an empath and could feel the emotions of others. This was basically part of the way that she struck up the friendship with the Swamp Thing, because she could feel him. She was not afraid of him. She married Matt Cable, who in the end is basically, she ends up having to divorce him because he becomes, possessed by the evil spirit of her late uncle, Anton Arcane, who had been sent to hell. And the way that he does this, while he is, we'll
talk about him later.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
We'll get into that. I don't want to give that away.
Yeah.
So basically, with her connection to Anton Arcane, later on in the story, when they have to basically get rid of Anton Arcane because of his evil ways, it is still said that these elemental forces of the earth will always need their avatar. So even though he was a corrupted avatar, the black, which is represents death, still needed its avatar. And Abby basically became that avatar. Once she became that avatar, she had greater powers than she had, and she could control the rotting of organic life forms and had the powers of flight and some shape-changing abilities. All of this, they chose her to be the avatar of the black because they felt that with her empath powers that she could recreate the balance she could bring back balance to the system that was put into unbalance by Anton Arcane becoming corrupted. So as there's a cycle of life and death. So the black is necessary. It's not something that could be eradicated. So she felt that she would basically be the best person to basically take on these powers, even though she was mighty afraid of it. We can go to the next.
All right. We have ETRIGAN, the demon, who's AKA also known as Jason Blood. That's his human name. But once immortal, who lived centuries ago in the days of Arthur. He was bound to the demon by Merlin, who was a wizard in King Arthur's court. It's basically like he has two different personalities. He has the demon, and then he has himself. He changes with a chant, a rhyme that is change, O form of man, and release the might from flesh and mire. Boil the blood in the heart of fire, gone, the form of man, rise the demon ETRIGAN. So he speaks in rhymes, which is really kind of interesting and cool. And that unlocks Jason to transform into the demonologist, the demon. He, like I said, lived centuries ago, but they brought a demon lord, Belial, to Earth by accident, and it needed a human host to exist, or it was going to pretty much destroy everything. So Jason willingly went into this, let this demon possess him, but it also made him immortal, and it gave him some really, he has fast healing, extremely enhanced strength, and of course, he can basically do magic. He cannot transform without the poem, though, being said. And so he has lived for a very long time, but he mostly is now in Gotham City as a demonologist. I've seen him in some of the Justice League cartoons. He pops up every once in a while, especially Justice League Unlimited. He's popped up in Flashpoint. He's popped up in a lot of the Justice League Dark movies. So yeah, he's a pretty popular character. He is not a member of Justice League Dark, but he does work with them. So, and of course, he and Swamp Thing are allies because they deal with the dark arts. So, yeah.
All right. Okay, and next up we have Deadman. Now, this is one of my favorite characters out of my limited DC repertoire. It's one of the earliest characters that I learned out that DC actually had characters outside of the Justice League, basically.
Yeah.
Deadman's real name was Boston Brand, and basically he was a circus aerialist who was murdered in his prime. Because he was murdered and his spirit could not find peace, he basically started haunting the earth in search of justice. Now, his spirit was granted the power to possess any living being by the Hindu god Ramakrishna, basically so that after his death, he could search for his killer and receive a measure of peace. Basically, once he obtained those powers, he became a literal ghost. And basically a DC superhero. He has worked alongside the regular Justice League, and he has been seen working with Batman a lot. And when in the formation of Justice League Dark, which is all of the, I guess you can say, the magic wielders that are familiar with the Justice League, he was one of the first people that were able to, that basically worked with this group because of his ability to possess human bodies. He can basically travel across dimensions and he can communicate with spirits. So, with this being said, Deadman was basically one of the best people that Swamp Thing could have on his side when he went into hell to retrieve Abigail's spirit and soul. And that's Deadman.
Right. Good old Spectre here. Now, am I not mistaken, Roland? Was he not the one that brought Arrow back?
Yes.
Okay, I thought so.
And Arrow actually became the Spectre.
Okay, he became the Spectre, yes. Even though they haven't done anything with that. But yes. Right. So in the CW world of in the Arrowverse, as we like to call it here, Spectre was featured in Infinite Crisis on Infinite Earths last year, when all the Arrowverse came together for once, including Black Lightning. Thank you. Because he is a member of the Arrowverse. But Spectre's first appearance actually was in 1940. He was in Morphon Comics. So he's one of these Golden Age superheroes. But Spectre has been around for a long time. When Lucifer rebelled against God, and he did not stand alone, and there were several angels that joined him in that rebellion. And when they lost, they were cast down to hell and became demons. And so one of those demons was known as Astar, and he went to the gates of heaven and begged for forgiveness for joining Lucifer's rebellion. The presence then chose Astar to become a vessel of one of the divine aspects, in this case, divine wrath. And the divine wrath combined with Astar to form a new being, which was the Spectre. From that point forward, he became God's instrument of vengeance. He is well known throughout, according to his lore, he's known throughout to destroy Sodom and Gomorrah. He was the one that killed the firstborns of Egypt. just all of those stories that deal with destruction and death in the Bible, that was the Spectre. And when Christ died on the cross, Spectre was the one that was released from his limbo and sought vengeance on mankind for killing him. But because of the example set by Jesus, it was decreed that all aspects of himself were now bound to a human soul. So God bound him to a human soul, and he was first bounded with an Indian man who would become the first of many souls that cried out for vengeance and bonded with the Spectre. So in order to bond with the Spectre, you have to have something that happens to you that brings you such grief that you need vengeance. So 20th century rolls around, and a police officer named Jim Corrigan, who was the 1940s, the first that was introduced in DC, comes along, and it creates a bond between the human ghost and the eternal spirit, and he becomes the Spectre. In that Morphon comics, who was seeking justice. He's since then bonded with many other human hosts, notably for DC, Green Lantern, Hal Jordan, as well as murdered Gotham City cop Crispus Allen. This spirit of vengeance, he has supernatural abilities to bring justice, and I mean justice. Like he does not play. He's not one of these heroes that does not kill. And he always goes after people who have committed heinous crimes. So his powers are off the chart. Literally, he pretty much has unlimited power. And if you're a criminal that has done someone wrong, you pray that the Spectre never finds you, basically. He will basically break your soul. That's what he's known for. So, but he is also he and Swamp Thing have worked together quite a few times, and he and Batman have clashed quite a few times too, because Batman doesn't believe in killing. So, but really interesting. Like I said, he's popped up throughout DC comics. And sometimes, like I said, Hal Jordan was the Spectre at one point in time. So after his death. So,
Erica,
yeah.
Let me say something about the Spectre. One of the things that he played, one of the positions that he plays in DC Comics is sort of similar to the Watchers in DC Comics.
Oh yeah. Those are the ones that are over the Green Lanterns.
Right, but the Spectre basically being the I guess you can say divine being that he is, he pops up across storylines all the time. He has his own storylines, but sometimes in the comics, I remember back in the day, I'd be reading the comic and then you'll see a little sidebar that somebody's looking in on the story, and it would be him.
I want to say I've seen him. One of my favorites growing up was The Death of Superman. I want to say he popped up in there. Not to intervene, but as just a witness.
Right.
Yeah, you're right. He does pop up kind of like that, especially when death is involved, and especially a death of great magnitude. Like I said,
he reminds me of the Watchers in Marvel.
Yeah.
So.
All right. Moving right along.
Now, next up is everybody's favorite. The favorite you love to hate.
Yes.
John Constantine, a mysterious human with connections to the world of magic. Basically a chain-smoking British who bears a striking resemblance to the musician Sting. He presents himself as an ally to the Swamp Thing, though at times, because of his ethics and honesty, it appears doubtful. He basically wields the dark arts to save his soul as well as the earth itself. He is one of the best occult private investigators, but he has a bad attitude. He's always known that his help will come with a price, because not only is he one of the best occult private investigators, but he is a notorious con man and grifter who actually has a past body count. His moral compass is basically as gray as it can be. He, over the years, he has basically become an expert sorcerer and magician, an accomplished liar and thief, basically known for his vices. And he has a lot of self-loathing and a on again, off again death wish. He basically has been able to cheat death many times and also been able to trick the forces of heaven and hell, meaning that he basically has enemies across the board. He basically got his some of his powers when his blood was demonically tainted after he got a transfusion from a demon named Nurgle. And this basically left him with heightened physical resistance, and he doesn't age as quickly as normal humans. His blood also leaves him immune to many illnesses and provides defense against certain types of occult creatures, such as vampires. He can't be turned into a vampire. And actually, there was some other thing he did with his blood. I think he created a portal. He was able to create portals with his blood as well. He's one of the current characters in DC's Legends of Tomorrow.
Yep.
And he as well is a member of Justice League Dark.
I'm going to add one more thing for him too.
Mm-hmm.
Because he got his start, Moore created him for Swamp Thing and before he got Hellblazer. And like Roland said, he's, you know, he's a gray, very, very gray. And he and Swamp Thing they have a love. They're friends. They're almost like frenemies in a sense. Swamp Thing has done some things that John didn't agree with, and John has definitely done some things the Swamp Thing never would ever agree to. But one of the essential storylines that Moore created was, remember I said that he and Abigail have Swamp Thing and Abigail have a child. Swamp Thing basically he merged himself with John and used John's body to impregnate his wife. That didn't go over well for John or Abigail. They were both kind of upset with, but it was all divine and set in place by the Parliament of Trees. They needed Swamp Thing to have a child. So, but John was kind of upset that Swamp Thing possessed him to that nature and violated him like that. And Abigail was kind of very upset about it, but everybody eventually got over that. But yeah, that's their history. They still work together though, you know. But nothing like being possessed by your best bud to impregnate your wife. But yeah. Next on our list is Animal Man. He is the avatar of the red. So we mentioned him earlier, teaming up with the avatar of the green quite often. Animal Man is for every living animal on Earth. So he takes PETA to the next level. Okay. This guy, Bernard Buddy Baker, is the protector of the red, a force that connects him with all animal life. In his teens, Buddy went hunting in the Iraq mountains, and he returned home and he was changed. Something in the woods connected him to the red, which is the life web, and that binds him together with every living animal on Earth. So encountering some escaped animals from a nearby zoo, Buddy discovered that his presence of an animal, he can absorb their special abilities. He is now man with animal powers. So a little bit about Buddy. He's a part of the Justice League, a little bit more. Buddy has, I hope one day we get to cover Buddy, because Buddy has a very interesting life as I read up on him. He is not as popular as some of the, he's not as popular as Swamp Thing. I don't even know if he had his own series. I think he had his own series for just a little while. He's a member of Justice League International, but he's mostly retired now. He's popped up in a lot of the cartoons. You'll see him pop up in Justice League Unlimited, but He does not. The latest thing that I've seen him in, as far as comic wise, he was a part of the Injustice series that DC did in the last few years. And his connection with the Red, he takes Animal Lover to a whole nother level. So there's some stuff that goes on in the Injustice League that pretty much leave the Earth kind of in peril. And Ra's al Ghul has this safe haven, a dome where all the animals live. And Animal Man is there. And that dome accidentally gets, it's kind of like a Noah's Ark, and it accidentally gets destroyed. And it causes Animal Man to go mad because all the animals there, not all the animals, but there's some rare animals that are there that are living in Raz's dome that end up being destroyed, and those were the last of their kind. So kind of makes him an enemy to Batman and all of those guys. But he has a very interesting story that unfortunately we won't be able to get into today, but he's semi-retired now, but he and the Green do team up at times because his feeling is that if it's bad for the earth, it's bad for animals. So anytime Swamp Thing needs him, he's there. He also has, because his powers are very similar to another hero that we've discussed earlier, which is Vixen. He and Vixen, that totem that Vixen has on her neck that gives her power, Buddy is connected to that also in some way, that life web. So they have worked together at times, but as part of Justice League. So yeah, he's quite an interesting character. Like I said, we cannot get into it today, but he's semi-retired, living in the suburbs with his wife and kids. Every once in a while, they'll call on him. He's also died many times and been reincarnated as a hybrid animal-human. I mean, like a hybrid of an animal and a human. It's super weird. There are some pictures. It's weird, but yeah, interesting hero. He does not have his own series right now, but like I said, he does pop up in Justice League every once in a while. But he really doesn't fool with humans anymore. He's that hero. He's like kind of like Swamp Thing doesn't really fool with humans anymore. He's mostly, if it's not about the green, he doesn't care. Animal Man is the same way. If it's not about the red, he really does not care.
All right.
I posted it. There
Yeah,
we
so
go.
next on our list is the Phantom Stranger. Basically, the Phantom Stranger is a mystical hero from the DC universe who you always see basically in a blue cloak and blue hat with his facial features obscured and his identity, nature, and powers all unknown. He normally acts as an intermediary between the physical world and the supernatural world. And basically, Moore had written a secret origin for this character in another series that suggests that he may be a fallen angel. Basically, an angel condemned for the crime of betrayal by the Circle of Eternity, the Phantom Stranger, and his fellow sinners, the Question and Pandora, were basically sentenced to eternal punishment specific to their crimes and vices. So for the stranger, whatever it was that he did, he would forever remain a mystery to those he meets, cursed to see the world, to know its destiny, but never truly be a part of it. He has the powers of immortality, supernatural knowledge, teleportation, intelligence, and energy manipulation. This character was actually seen on the Swamp Thing's CW series. If you guys have a chance to check that out, yes. If you remember the character Daniel Cassidy, remember?
See, I haven't watched it yet.
Okay,
so I can't.
So there's a character that we failed to lead, that we failed to add in here, but he may get his own later because I'm actually finding out that he's quite a large character in the DC universe, and that's the Blue Devil.
Yeah, Blue Devil. Yeah.
Okay, and so in the CW series, the interaction is that Daniel Cassidy comes to the Louisiana town where Swamp Thing is. He knows something is going on, but he also knows that he cannot leave the city limits. He's there for a reason. And so I don't know if they did this to so that they wouldn't have to use ETRIGAN in the story,
okay.
but because they are both demonic in nature.
Gotcha.
But during the series, Cassidy is normally confronted with the Phantom Stranger. Basically pops up on him to speak to him time to time, and those are what most of his scenes are in the Swamp Thing.
Okay.
Because it basically seemed like it was laying it out that there would be a second season, and it would hint on basically the Blue Devil making sure that the Swamp Thing was basically knew its role in the world. And so after the Swamp Thing was able to come to fruition, and that means that everything had been set straight, as far as timelines and everything. Abigail has not become part of the Rot yet, or the avatar of the Rot yet. The only other person who has been introduced at this time is the Flouronic man, Woodrue.
Because I think even her husband, Matt, is there, right, but he's a police officer. So, yeah.
Right. All right. So the Phantom Stranger is basically in the CW series, he acts as that intermediary.
Okay.
Not with the Swamp Thing, with the Blue Devil.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. I should check that out. All right. And now we're going to talk about the Parliament of Trees. This one's not very long. Parliament of Trees is something that Alan Moore introduced. And basically what he wanted to do was how I was talking about in the beginning with that initial story with the House of Secrets. That story took place around the turn of the century, 1900s, Louisiana. You have this Swamp Thing that's created, but then you don't hear about him again until the saga, 1972, when they kind of rebooted, and you have Alec Holland, who's now Swamp Thing, and then you have another reboot. But what he wanted to show was that there is this Parliament of Trees, this group that wants to come together to support Earth's ecology. And whoever the avatar is, they're the protector of the green. So they all have this same powers, the same control. And we'll talk about the other things like the red and all of that. But this Parliament of Trees was there to always be the guide to whoever the green was. And it's somewhere that Swamp Thing can go and he could talk to them because they have all the history of the former Swamp Thing. So there were other avatars of the green. And like I said earlier, the daughter that Abigail and Alec Swamp Thing have together, Teffy, was implanted into Abigail by the Parliament. They have their reasons of doing everything that they do. But yeah, and they control their powers, and they control all forms of plant life also. So, but there are more than one Swamp Thing. There's been Swamp Things throughout history, basically. People who have died in the swamp, things like that, pilots, other things. They all seem to have the name that starts with A. Maybe that's a little funny joke that they have. I don't know. But yeah, currently, of course, Swamp Thing is the avatar of the green. So,
all right. Now we get into the enemies of the Swamp Thing. This first man he's an enemy, but not really. He's really an anti-hero who is basically caught in a human caught in the world of the Swamp Thing, as we could say, the Flouronic man, Dr. Jason Woodrue. Basically, he was a respected botanist that was hired by General Sunderland, who is I guess you can say the person on point when the Swamp Thing became who he was. In the TV series, Sunderland is I want to say not an oil magnate, but maybe a timber magnate or somebody who's basically cutting down the forest. His family is deeply ingrained in that community. Basically, he kind of runs things. Just basically the richest man in the neighborhood. But in the comics, he's a military figure, and he hires Jason Woodrue to discover how Alec Holland had been turned into the Swamp Thing. And so when Woodrue discovers the creature, he starts doing his studies, and he finds that the creature is an intelligent mass of plant life that had fed on Holland's dead body, his memories and his psyche. It wasn't that he was a mutated version of Holland. So basically, Woodrue goes back to Sunderland and tries to warn him that the Swamp Thing is not dead. But with the general refusing to listen and announcing his intention to terminate Woodrue's employment, the Flouronic man basically trapped Sunderland in the office with the Swamp Thing, who he was experimenting on, and had him in a frozen-like state. But what he did, he let him thaw out. And the Swamp Thing was basically woke up mad and killed the general. Now, while how Jason Woodrue became the Flouronic man is basically while he was doing his research, he noticed that Swamp Thing had these little tubers growing off of him, like little potatoes or whatever, and he decided to take a chance, and he ate one of them. Now, what ended up happening is once he ate that psychedelic tuber, I'm thinking it was something similar along the same way that he produced the tubers so that he could connect with Abigail. But he did that on purpose. Woodrue basically just took something off that was growing off of the man and popped, and ate it. And while it connected him to the same life force that Swamp Thing was connected to, he was still in full command of his humanity. So what ended up happening is once he was connected to the green, it drove him mad. And so everything that he was doing was basically for the sake of the earth. He never did anything out of malice, but he was still labeled a villain. He actually became an eco-terrorist, and in the storylines, even though his story starts with the Swamp Thing, he's actually a main antagonist of the Atom. And he's also responsible for the creation of everybody's favorite, Gotham's favorite hybrid, Poison Ivy.
Yeah, everybody loves Poison Ivy.
Right. So the only thing with Jason Woodrue is that basically because of his trip through the green, he's mentally ill. So he's more or less an anti-hero instead of a villain.
Right. All right. Oh, this one right here. Okay. Anton and Matt. Now they're put together for a reason, because Arcane is the villain, the Rot, avatar of Rot, aka the Black. So a little bit about Anton. Anton is the uncle of Abigail. And when I say uncle, I mean evil uncle. He is a scientist and a magician. So he mixes science and magic. He was the primary villain in the original series of that ran in 1972 of Swamp Thing. He was killed. He died, and he was sent to hell, basically. And he returned from hell in the form of an insect. And he ended up possessing Matt Cable, who was Abigail's husband at the time. So when he is reintroduced again, it's in the saga of Swamp Thing. He comes back as this fly. He's a fly. So Matt Cable, who is Abigail's husband, he was actually introduced first in the original 72 series of Swamp Thing. He was an investigator for the Defense Department's intelligence, and a close friend of Alec and Linda Holland. When Alec died, when Alec died, he thought that the Swamp Thing killed Alec. So he chased the Swamp Thing all the way to what he thought was the Swamp Thing. He chased all the way to the Baltic mountains, more the Baltic mountains area. But that was not Swamp Thing. That was a zombie-like Swamp Thing that was nothing but not even possessed, but it was nothing but a form of that looked like Swamp Thing. Swamp Thing was actually nowhere around there. But what he thought he killed when he goes chasing this swamp-like thing, he meets Abigail at that time, who is a medic in the area, and they form a friendship and they begin hunting together. When he thinks he kills Swamp Thing, they leave and come back to Louisiana, and they get married and kind of sort of live their lives. But what they realize is that Swamp Thing is not dead, and it has possessed Alec's memories. So that's when that friendship with Abigail and Swamp Thing is created. Matt, because of his job, he was on one of his missions, and he ends up getting locked in something called the Barclay Clinic. And while he's locked in there, he basically loses his mind. He suffers a complete mental breakdown. And when he returns, he's no longer the Matt that left. He's now like sort of a whole of the man he was. And so he turns to alcohol to kind of deal with the madness. And in the process of returning to alcohol, he starts abusing Abigail. So Abby then turns to Swamp Thing, and their friendship grows. And of course, this causes Matt to drink even more. And he's bitter about the time that she spends with Swamp Thing, even though they're just friends. There's nothing going on with them. When this happens, as he turns to alcohol and he begins drinking more and more, the drinking kind of sort of helps him deal with the madness, but the madness also invites other things like Arcane, the villain Arcane. So Arcane is able to, as being a fly, land on Matt's body, landing on him, and he said, hey, I'm going to revive you. I'm going to relieve you of the madness that you're experiencing. He's whispering this in Matt's ear. And so Matt agrees to let Arcane possess his body. And that leaves, now he doesn't know it's Anton, Abigail's evil uncle, an uncle that Matt knows about because Abigail has told him some of the things that her uncle did while he was alive. And so he did not know that at the time that was the spirit that was possessing him. And he possesses Cable's body, and with that gains Cable's godlike power because, that's all we need. So in the process of that, Arcane is actually able to do a whole lot of evil, including assault his own niece as he is in her husband's body. And eventually Matt is able to send Arcane back to hell, but it costs I'm sorry, what I forgot to mention was when Matt was going through his madness and he was drinking a lot, he was in a car crash. So that's how in the car crash he basically was dying. That's why Arcane was able to revive his body and make this deal with the devil, basically. So after Matt kind of sort of regains control of his body again after sending Arcane back to hell, the effects of the car crash come back, and he's not able to maintain his body nor his sanity. and he his like he can't repair his body, basically, not like he had the power of Arcane. And so yeah, he brings Abigail back because after Arcane does what he does to his niece, she's basically in a limbo. She's dying. And so Matt's like, I'll sacrifice my life for yours. So he does that. So his body cannot be repaired. Her soul is re-intact, and she's rescued from hell by Swamp Thing. And I believe John Constantine helps him with that too. And also one more. Was it Deadman?
Mm-hmm.
Roland? Yeah, Deadman. They all help him bring Abigail back from hell. But Alec was not able, not Alec, I'm sorry, Matt was not able to be saved, and he remains in a coma for the rest of his mortal life, basically.
Can I interject something?
Yeah.
Okay, so when you speak of Matt Cable having godlike powers that Anton Arcane, wanted to basically possess,
Mm-hmm.
he did not initially have any powers.
No.
But that stay in that clinic,
Yeah.
that mission that went wrong, when his mind was damaged as a prisoner there, that's when he gained. It says that he gained the basically the power or the ability to alter reality itself.
Yeah.
So he started, that's what basically led into their divorce.
Yeah.
Because he was doing unnecessary stuff like reanimating dead bodies and stuff of that nature, just because he could behind her back.
Oh yeah.
So
I did read about that, and I didn't include it in my notes because I was like,
oh well, I wasn't gonna get all into why
yeah,
he was
I was like,
but
we are not going to get into that
no,
today.
no,
That
no,
is
no.
not,
But,
that is no.
but
Yeah,
yeah,
he was doing some weird things with dead bodies.
but that was one of the reasons that
Mhm.
Anton Arcane was able to basically pinpoint him as this is going to be my vessel.
Yeah.
You know.
And I only touched on, I mean, like I said, when oh gosh, when Moore took over for writing, like I said, the Comic Code would not give their stamp of approval for what Moore wrote in the 80s. Right. And when I say he went down some dark path, like reading that, I've read that entire series. It was like, I think somewhere in the 2000s, I got a hold of that series and read the entire thing. And it's almost like a psychedelic trip.
Yeah.
But he did, so like he went down some dark paths with some of these characters, because Abigail suffered a lot under her uncle for what he did to her. And yeah, it was kind of crazy, but yeah.
Okay, so our next character, he has come into contention with the Swamp Thing. But again, like the Flouronic man, he's not really, he's more of an anti-hero. Mm-hmm. In the past, he has done more damage than good, but in the recent storylines, because the moniker Brother Blood is something that's passed down, the character that we have now that is Brother Blood is Sebastian Blood, and it's basically he's an anti-hero. So basically what it is, he's from a long line of monks that basically came into possession of a mystical artifact that allowed him to slow his aging. But the one of the things that it takes is that he has to have human blood in order to make this work. So the vampiric cult of blood has been led for generations by a person with the moniker Brother Blood, with each new bearer of the title being the son of his predecessor. So the current Brother Blood and Sebastian Blood is basically centuries old. And where he connects with the Swamp Thing is that he connects more with Animal Man, and that's how he is brought into the Swamp Thing storyline. Because when Animal Man and Swamp Thing have had to go in and find something, I can't find the name of the storyline. I had it up here, but basically they thought that Brother Blood was corrupting animals in the red, or beings that were connected to the red, and they find out that it was not him. Basically, from traveling, they had to travel through the red, the blue, the green, and everything else. If you could go to the next slide, and we'll go to this is a breakdown, a list of all the earth elementals. As you know, what we've been speaking on is the green, which is analogous to the other forces of nature, their elements and their dimensions. So within this Swamp Thing storyline, we have several, and I'm just going to read them off real quick for you. You have the black, which we have talked about, which is associated with death, and it's run by the Parliament of Decay, and the red, which is connected to all animal life and run by the Parliament of Limbs. We have the clear, which is associated with aquatic life, the white, which is associated with air elementals, the gray, which is connected to all fungal life. Now, the gray is a little different than the rest of the elementals, as it is not earthborn. The gray was actually, in the storylines, the gray was something that established on Earth after a meteor hit in the past, during that, before the age of the dinosaurs. But things, fungi, mushrooms, are said to be basically the life, basically the plants and the life forms that were on this specific planet that this asteroid came from after that planet was destroyed. There's a fire realm that's located within the Earth's sun, which is associated with the fire elementals and connected to the Parliament of Flames. Now, this one was real interesting, as in that the members of the Parliament of Flames, one of them is Firestorm. So characters of that nature. We have the Melt, which is connected to Earth elementals and run by the Parliament of Stones. The Metal, which is connected to all of Earth's metals and technological elements and run by the Rhythm. And the Divided, which is basically everything, all the single cells, bacteria, amoebas, and microscopic forms of life. And so this list right here, if you would like to go and read back on a lot of some of the overlying things that basically build the building blocks of the DC universe, then this is a good starting point right here. All right.
Well, that is Swamp Thing and all of its characters. And these are our works cited here, but yeah. Got some new arrivals here at the library. Forest Park, we got a collection of the Amazing Spider-Man with the Green Goblin, Last Stand. We have an epic collection of Avengers West Coast. And we also have the Black Panther Party. It's a nonfiction there. So kind of look at the birth of the Black Panther Party from its start and kind of where it went from there. These are all available to be checked out right now. I think they came in the last 2 weeks, so they shouldn't be checked out yet. Yeah, if you're interested in them, come by. We are open full time now to the public. We also have computer access by appointment only. If you are interested in that, just give us a call. Anything else, Roland?
Yeah, pretty soon in our reference area,
Yeah.
We will have we will actually spotlight it. We have a special surprise coming for you guys. We will spotlight it here on the graphic
on the graphic novel club. We will next time.
All
We're
right.
gonna have to prop that bad boy up on something.
Yeah. For library use only.
Yes. You have to ask for it at the desk. But yeah, so next time we meet, it won't be 2 weeks from today due to scheduling conflicts, but we will meet again on May 25th. And because it's Asian and Pacific Islander Heritage Month, we will be highlighting some of the heroes of DC and Marvel that have Asian and Pacific Islander backgrounds. So this is going to be really interesting because I believe Marvel the other day released their Phase 4. Am I right, Roland?
Yeah.
Phase 4. So yeah, one of their characters that has a movie coming out, I believe in September, is it Shang-Chi? Shang-Chi?
Shang-Chi.
Shang-Chi. That's what I thought. So yeah, so we will probably cover him in this particular one, but we will also probably give him closer to the release of that movie, his own graphic novel club. So yeah, we will see you guys back on May 25th and enjoy the rest of this rainy day here in Atlanta.
All right, see you.